Comrades and friends, I'm not going to rise to the bait that's been thrown down before us by representatives of the party funded by the bailed-out bankers, the party that shields the corporate tax dodgers, the party that supported the dictatorships and their death squads throughout Latin America in the 1960s and 70s, the party stuffed full with all the apologists for apartheid South Africa, who now grovel before Nelson Mandela as if they'd been his friends and allies all along. I won't rise to any of that knockabout nonsense that we've heard. I want to deal with the main proposition in front of you. Capitalism has taken centuries to establish itself as the world's predominant economic and social system, after many failures and many atrocities, including slavery and the slave trade that financed the Industrial Revolution in Britain. So far, we have witnessed only the first attempts to build an alternative socialist society, and then only in the most hostile and adverse conditions. Nobody would have chosen Russia in 1917 as the ideal starting point for creating a new civilization. And that was before the rebellion of the Tsarist generals, supported by 17 foreign armies of intervention. That was before the destruction of 70,000 cities, towns and villages, and of 27 million Soviet citizens by Nazi Germany and its allies. It was mostly on the basis of socialist industrialization and socialist planning that the Soviet Red Army, in Winston Churchill's words, tore the guts out of the Nazi war machine on the Eastern Front, where 4/5 of the World War II fighting actually took place. The Soviet Union and socialism rescued the peoples of Europe from fascist barbarism. Russian socialism transformed the Soviet Union. Yes?
Would you say that the political repression caused by the Soviet Union, once it finished eliminating Nazi Germany's war capital to what they underwent jointly?
I will come to some of the mistakes and the crimes of the Stalin regime in just a short while. Russian socialism. I like to deal with both sides of the argument, and not just the one-eyed type of demagoguery that we've had from the other side. Russian socialism transformed the Soviet Union into a modern superpower, in which for the first time the vast majority of its citizens enjoyed healthcare, education, culture and social security. An opinion poll published on October the 12th this year, look it up on the internet in Russian and in English, confirmed that still today a majority of Russians, 60% according to the Public Opinion Foundation, believe that overall the socialist system had been a good one. These are, no, I won't take any more, thank you. These, I might come to your point as well in a short while. These are the same Russian citizens who, with the restoration of capitalism, have experienced the world's biggest drop in male life expectancy since records began. They regret the loss of socialism's free and extensive social provision, its full employment, its order and stability, and its spirit of cooperation. Of course, they don't miss the restrictions on rights and liberties, all the abuses of power. 1.5 million executions in Stalin's purges, that's according to the Harvard University Press studies of the archives. 1.5 million executions in Stalin's purges, most of the victims communists, is an unforgivable crime, even though the figures have been grossly exaggerated by Western propaganda ever since. Then there were the shortages of consumer goods, although there's a new popular saying that I heard in Moscow only a couple of months ago. Under socialism, the shops were empty and the fridges were full. Under capitalism, the shops are full, but the fridges are empty. The Soviet system failed to trust and involve the mass of ordinary people in the running of society, just as capitalism does today. It failed to resolve important economic problems of incentive, initiative, and the comprehensive application of technology, and I'll agree with one or two of the points that those on the other side of the debate made in that respect. The Soviet Union tried to keep up in the arms race, as the United States pioneered the atom bomb, the hydrogen bomb, and intercontinental ballistic missiles, and established NATO 6 years before the Warsaw Pact. Yet without empires or a slave trade, the primitive socialism of the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe industrialized their economies, secured equal status for women and small nationalities, and provided free or low-cost education, healthcare, public transport and housing for all. They accomplished in decades what capitalism, after 2 centuries, still cannot guarantee to many of its citizens, even in the most developed capitalist countries. In the third world, let's come to China and Cuba. China and Cuba are like beacons of social progress amid oceans of squalor, hunger, and illiteracy. In Cuba, nobody goes hungry. They have health and education systems to match, no, not at the moment, sorry. They have health and education systems to match those of the richest capitalist countries. Cuban socialism mobilizes all the resources of society to minimize the human casualties of the very same storms that kill hundreds and thousands when they happen elsewhere in other countries. And of course, those are hundreds and thousands invariably of the poorest people in those capitalist countries. And where Western powers export weapons to the profit, of course, of the arms corporations, Cuba exports only thousands of volunteer doctors, usually free of charge. Socialist planning and public ownership of key sectors, including banking, have been the basis for China's phenomenal growth. Western technology is utilized, yes, on a big scale, but under strict state control. Chinese socialism has lifted 700 million people out of absolute poverty. As the World Bank, not a socialist institution, as the World Bank reported in 2007, and I quote directly, China's rapid growth over the last 20 years has reduced poverty and improved living standards on a scale and at a pace unequaled in history. Now the peoples of Venezuela and Bolivia are taking their own roads to their own forms of socialism. Are we saying that they're all doomed? If you vote in favor of the proposition this evening, you are declaring no confidence in your ability and that of future generations to progress beyond the selfish, corrupt and wasteful system that is capitalism. You're saying that we human beings are incapable of planning collectively and democratically, because there'll be different points of view, but we'll sort that out democratically. We're incapable of planning a fairer, cleaner, more sustainable society. You're abandoning the world and its resources to the giant energy and food and pharmaceutical and armaments and financial corporations. And future generations will look back with disbelief that you could have been so lacking in vision and so devoid of confidence in humanity that you would support a proposition of this kind.